Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The member started off in terms of the breaking news about the RCMP doing the investigation. And it's interesting, if the Conservatives would only let the RCMP do what it is that they need to do, Mr. Speaker. Instead, they want to blur judicial independence. And that's what this motion, or what it is, this game that the Conservatives are playing, Mr. Speaker, contrary to what the RCMP are recommending. But I wanted to take issue with something in which this member, more probably than any other Conservative member, tries to politicize things. How many times do we hear him say, Liberal appointed chair, she's a Liberal, and so on, Liberal friendly? The member knows full well that she was an advisor to Brian Mulroney, she was an advisor to Stephen Harper, she was an advisor to Jim Flaherty, she's a big donor, thousands and thousands of dollars to the Conservative Party. Yet, he continues to say Liberal friendly. The bottom line is, Mr. Speaker, we do not condone. We have taken strict action against what has taken place. Independent investigations, freezing of funds, replacement of board. The only one that's been irresponsible here is the Conservative Party of Canada.
The honourable member from Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
We know how these Liberals love to speak out of both sides of their mouth. So let me share with Canadians an article from the Globe and Mail, which we know they've called fake news in the past. That Prime Minister has run down honest reporting of his record. But here we have it, September 11th, 2019. Ottawa blocks RCMP on SNC Lavalin inquiry. The RCMP has been looking into potential obstruction of justice in the handling of the prosecution of SNC Lavalin Group, but its examination has been stymied by the federal government's refusal to lift cabinet confidentiality for all witnesses. This is it. This is their game. This is the game that they play. There's no law that they won't break, and no falsehood that they won't offer to cover for what we know they want to do best, and that's to help Liberal insiders get ahead. We're not going to stand for it.
The honourable member for Rimouski-Neigette-Témiscouata-Les-Basques. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I listened to my colleague's speech and what all the Conservatives are saying, the so-called common sense people, but I think they're lacking in common sense because they're forgetting their history. I agree with them on one point, that corruption really is a part of the Liberal DNA, but it's also in the Conservative DNA. The Conservative is reminding everyone what the facts are, but I'd like to remind him of a few when they were in power. $50 million was misappropriated in the riding of Tony Clement, a former Conservative minister. He was Minister of Industry. And you know what they did, what the Conservative Party did to reward him? They gave him a promotion. It's incredible. So they reward those who misappropriate funds. And then on other facts, the questions of privilege like we're seeing here today, well, the Conservatives disagreed to produce documents that the House demanded. There was the Afghan detainees in 2010, the Senate spending scandal, the omnibus budget. I think my colleague is forgetting parts of history. My only question for him is, how are Quebecers supposed to trust a Conservative Party with the worst record of such shameful scandals?
The honourable member from Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Well, Speaker, with arguments like that, it's a real shame that I don't have the opportunity to run against a Bloc Québécois member in my community, because I think Canadians would find that to be pretty flimsy. You know, that member and his party have been propping up a Liberal government that is unrivaled in their corruption, unrivaled. And we've seen it here today with this $400 million scandal. How could anyone supply confidence to a Liberal government with their $60 million Arrive scam? How could anyone in good conscience do that? When people in the province of Quebec, like in every province and territory in our federation, have been suffering, lined up at food banks. The lines at the food banks in Quebec aren't any shorter. And it's a real shame, because there's an opportunity to to have a carbon tax election. There's an opportunity to remove confidence from this government. And it's up to that member to make that decision with his caucus if they're going to continue to support a government that certainly hasn't been supporting people in my community, people in my province, or people in my country, which includes Quebec.